The first drop didn't fall. It rose. A farmer watched a bead of rain climb from a puddle into the sky. At first, he thought the wind was playing tricks on his tired eyes. Then every puddle around him began to empty. Rivers stopped flowing toward the sea. Water climbed cliffs, escaped from wells, lifted itself out of lakes, and streamed upward like invisible waterfalls, reversing the laws of the world. Within hours, every ocean on earth had begun to rise into the heavens. No one knew why. No scientist could explain it. No king could stop it. And hidden above the clouds, something ancient had just awakened. Long before people built kingdoms, before maps had borders or stories had endings, there had been a legend whispered only among the oldest storytellers. They spoke of the sky rivers, not rivers that crossed mountains, but rivers that crossed the heavens. Invisible currents carrying every drop of water that had ever existed. According to the tale, rain was never created inside clouds. It was borrowed. The sky rivers carried the world's water through an endless cycle watched over by beings older than time itself. Everyone dismissed the legend until the day every river on earth began flowing upward. Far away from crowded cities, nestled between emerald hills and forests, wrapped in silver mist, stood the quiet village of Windmere. Life there had always revolved around water. Children raced beside sparkling streams. Mill wheels turned without pause. Gardens bloomed in impossible colors. Every morning began with the peaceful sound of flowing rivers. Until silence arrived. The stream crossing the village simply stopped. The current hesitated. The fish became strangely still. Then, before hundreds of terrified eyes, the water slowly detached itself from the riverbed. Like thousands of tiny crystal snakes, it floated upward. The villagers stood frozen. Not a single splash, not a single wave, only water silently abandoning the earth. People screamed. Some ran toward the river. Others fell to their knees praying. The village elders simply whispered one sentence, "It's happening again." Nobody understood what he meant. Nobody except one curious 14-year-old boy standing near the old bridge. His name was Kael. Unlike everyone else, Kael wasn't frightened by mysteries. He chased them. Ever since he was little, he'd wandered farther into the forests than anyone dared, climbed forgotten ruins, and filled notebooks with impossible questions. Why did some stars blink differently? Why did birds suddenly fall silent before storms? Why did ancient maps always leave the northern mountains blank? His father used to laugh. The world hides secrets because it enjoys being discovered. His father had disappeared 3 years earlier while exploring those same northern mountains. No body, no answers, only an unfinished journal. Kael carried it everywhere. Its final page contained only one sentence. When the rivers change direction, follow them. At the time, everyone assumed grief had driven his father mad. Now, those words felt terrifyingly real. As panic spread across Windmere, Kael hurried home. His grandmother was already filling every bucket she owned. Neighbors fought over barrels. People dug desperate holes in the ground, hoping to trap water before it escaped. It didn't matter. The water ignored every container. Even sealed bottles slowly emptied. The liquid slipped through tiny cracks impossible to see, then drifted toward the sky like glowing threads. It was as if water itself had made a choice, and humanity was no longer part of it. That night, the stars reflected strangely. Instead of shining above, they shimmered beneath the rising streams. The entire sky looked like a gigantic upside-down ocean. Thousands of glowing rivers stretched between the constellations. Some curved around the moon. Others disappeared beyond sight. Every village, every city, every mountain watched the impossible spectacle in horrified silence. No one slept. 3 days later, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Wells ran dry. Harvests withered. Animals abandoned their nests, searching for moisture. Ships rested uselessly on exposed seabeds. Entire coastlines transformed overnight into endless plains of cracked salt. People began migrating inland. Wars broke out over underground springs. Kings declared emergencies. Inventors promised impossible machines. Religious leaders claimed the end of the world had arrived. Yet the water continued climbing, without stopping, without slowing, without explanation. Deep beneath Windmere stood an abandoned observatory carved directly into the mountain. Few remembered it existed. Fewer still knew how to enter. Kael did. His father had shown him years ago. Hidden behind thick ivy lay an ancient stone door marked with symbols resembling flowing rivers twisting into stars. Inside, dust covered countless strange instruments. Crystal lenses, rotating celestial maps, enormous clocks that no longer measured time. At the center stood a massive bronze sphere suspended by chains thinner than spider silk. As Kael approached, the sphere began glowing, not brightly, softly, like moonlight trapped inside metal. Then the entire room trembled. Ancient gears awakened with thunderous echoes. One by one, forgotten mechanisms turned for the first time in centuries. A beam of pale light shot toward the ceiling. Across the bronze sphere appeared glowing lines. Not random lines, maps, rivers, except they weren't on Earth. They flowed across the stars. Kael's heartbeat quickened. The sky rivers, they were real. Before he could react, another voice echoed through the darkness. I was wondering how long it would take someone to find this place. Kael spun around. Standing near the doorway was a girl about his age, wrapped in a dark traveling cloak. Silver dust covered her boots. A strange compass hung from her neck. Unlike ordinary compasses, its needle pointed upward, always upward. She didn't seem surprised by the glowing observatory. She looked relieved. "My name is Lyra," she said calmly, "and if we don't reach the source of those rivers before the last ocean disappears—" She hesitated, her eyes fixed on the glowing map. "There won't be a world left to save." Kael stared at her. "Who are you?" She looked away for a moment, as though deciding how much truth he deserved. "My grandfather belonged to an order that no longer exists." "What order?" "The Keepers of the Sky Rivers." Silence filled the observatory. Kael wanted to laugh. Instead, he remembered the impossible rivers floating above the clouds. Nothing sounded impossible anymore. "My grandfather spent his life waiting for this day," Lyra continued. "He always said the rivers only rise when the gate above the world has been opened." "What gate?" "I don't know. He died before he could tell me." She removed an old leather notebook from her satchel. Its cover matched the symbols carved around the observatory. Kael froze. His father's journal carried the same mark. Without speaking, they exchanged notebooks. Each opened the other's final page. Kael's journal ended with, "When the rivers change direction, follow them." Lyra's ended with, "Never let the heart of the sky wake alone." Neither understood what it meant. Yet together, the two unfinished messages formed something far more dangerous than either had expected. A warning. Before either of them could say another word, the observatory shook violently. Outside, the villagers screamed. Kael and Lyra rushed into the night. Everyone in Windmere stood staring upward, not at the stars, at the moon. Something impossible was happening. The rivers rising into the heavens no longer disappeared into the clouds. They were circling the moon itself. Billions of shimmering streams wrapped around it like glowing vines. Then the moon opened its eyes, not literally, but across its surface, enormous lines of silver light slowly formed the unmistakable shape of a sleeping face. The entire sky inhaled, and somewhere far above the clouds, something ancient opened its eyes for the first time in thousands of years. Kael gripped his father's journal tighter than ever before. Without realizing it, he whispered the words that would change his life forever. We have to follow the water, and somewhere beyond the highest clouds, the sky rivers were already waiting. The journey began before sunrise. There was no farewell, no celebration, no promise that Kael or Lyra would ever return. Windmere had become a village of frightened faces and empty wells. Mothers clutched children with cracked lips. Farmers stared helplessly at fields turning gray. The old mill stood frozen, its wheel motionless for the first time in generations. Everyone watched the water leave. No one knew how to follow it, except the two teenagers carrying journals written by men who had spent their lives preparing for this impossible day. Kael tightened the straps of his pack. Inside were only the essentials: dried food, climbing rope, flint, his father's journal, and a small glass bottle containing the very last water collected before the rivers had begun to rise. The bottle was completely sealed with wax, yet every few minutes another tiny drop vanished from inside. Even imprisoned water wanted to go home. Lyra noticed him watching. It won't stay much longer. You've seen this before? No. Then how do you know? My grandfather wrote that once the sky rivers awaken, every drop remembers where it came from. Kael looked at the bottle again. The water wasn't simply evaporating. Each disappearing drop became a tiny thread of silver light before slipping through the glass itself. It was escaping, not leaking, escaping. That thought stayed with him as they left the village behind. Their destination lay far beyond the northern mountains, where ancient maps dissolved into blank parchment. Travelers avoided those lands. Some claimed gravity behaved strangely there. Others spoke of forests where rivers flowed in circles or cliffs that whispered names during the night. Most believed they were simply old myths. But lately, every myth had started becoming true. The first days were deceptively peaceful. Without rivers, the valleys were eerily silent. No frogs, no rushing streams, no insects humming over ponds, only dry stones and endless wind. It felt as though the world had forgotten how to breathe. At first, Kael assumed animals had fled somewhere safer. Then they found them. Hundreds of deer stood motionless around an empty lake. None drank, none grazed. They simply stared upward. Birds circled overhead without flapping their wings, gliding effortlessly toward the clouds before changing direction at the last moment, as if obeying commands invisible to human eyes. Even wolves ignored the travelers. They too watched the sky. Lyra whispered, "They're listening." Listening to what? The rivers. Kael frowned. "I don't hear anything." "You will." That night, they camped beneath a cliff where ancient carvings stretched across the stone. Unlike ordinary cave paintings, these glowed faintly whenever moonlight touched them. Kael brushed away centuries of moss. The images revealed enormous rivers flowing through the stars. People climbed them like staircases. Clouds became oceans. The moon floated beneath the earth instead of above it. Near the center stood a gigantic figure whose body seemed made entirely of flowing water. No face, no eyes, only endless currents twisting through the shape of a sleeping giant. Beneath it were symbols matching those inside both journals. Lyra translated slowly. The river remembers. The sky forgets. The heart chooses. Kael waited. That's all? No. She pointed toward damaged symbols where time had erased entire sentences. The rest is missing. Something about that bothered him. Every clue they found felt incomplete. Every answer created even larger questions, almost as though history itself had been intentionally broken apart. The following afternoon, they reached the first abandoned city. Stone towers leaned at impossible angles. Bridges hung over empty riverbeds. Boats rested in streets where water once reached rooftops. No bodies, no signs of battle, only silence. Lyra crouched beside strange footprints preserved in dried mud. They left recently. Who? The people? They just abandoned everything? She nodded toward the empty harbor. No. Kael followed her gaze. Every boat remained tied to the docks. Every cart stood untouched. Jewelry glittered inside broken market stalls. Gold covered the streets. No one had stolen anything. People hadn't escaped. They had walked away, together, toward the mountains, as though answering the same invisible call. Inside the city's library, Kael discovered shelves collapsed beneath centuries of dust. Most books had rotted beyond recognition, except one. Bound in blue leather, its pages remained perfectly untouched. He opened it carefully. Every page was blank, until a single drop escaped from his bottle. The tiny bead floated through the air, landed upon the paper, and glowing words spread across every page. Not ink, water. The letters flowed like living streams. Kael read aloud. When the rivers rise, the gates awaken. The first gate opens within the sky. The second opens within memory. The third. The words suddenly dissolved, gone, as if someone had erased them from existence. What happened? Lyra stared at the page. It didn't disappear. It hid. From who? Neither of them answered, because footsteps echoed somewhere inside the library. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Kael grabbed a broken spear leaning against the wall. The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, a voice. You shouldn't be reading that. An old man emerged from between the shelves. His beard reached his waist. His clothes looked stitched from dozens of different travelers' cloaks. Around his neck hung tiny glass bottles, each completely empty. Yet they shimmered as though still filled with water. Kael lowered the spear slightly. Who are you? I've had many names. I stopped using them after everyone I knew forgot mine. Lyra's eyes widened. The Wanderer. The old man smiled sadly. So your grandfather remembered. You knew him? I knew everyone who tried reaching the Sky Rivers. Then tell us how. His smile vanished. None of them came back. The old man introduced himself only as Orin. He refused every other question. Instead, he led them beneath the ruined city through tunnels older than its foundations. Hours later, they entered a vast underground chamber. Its ceiling had collapsed long ago, revealing the night sky. Except the stars looked wrong. They moved, not slowly like ordinary constellations, rapidly, flowing together like currents. Kael stared upward. They're not stars? No. Orin nodded. They're reflections. Of what? The true sky. Lyra frowned. What do you mean, true sky? Orin picked up a pebble and tossed it upward. Instead of falling back, the stone continued rising higher, higher, until it vanished among the stars. Kael's heart raced. Gravity had reversed. Not everywhere, only here. Orin spoke quietly. The closer you get to the sky, Rivers, the less certain the world becomes. Over the following days, Orin became their reluctant guide. He never explained how he survived alone. He always woke before sunrise. Sometimes Kael caught him staring toward the heavens with tears in his eyes. Other times he whispered names to the wind. One evening, Kael finally asked, "Who are you talking to?" "My family." "They're dead?" "I hope so." Kael blinked. "What does that mean?" Orin looked toward the rising rivers. If they answered the call, his voice broke. Death would have been kinder. That sentence haunted Kael, especially after they encountered the first of the called. At first, he mistook them for travelers. Hundreds walked silently across a dry valley. Young, old, children, warriors, merchants. None spoke, none blinked. Each carried an empty clay bowl. All walked in the same direction, north, toward the mountains, toward the source. Kael approached one carefully. "Excuse me?" No response. He waved a hand before the man's eyes. Nothing. The pupils shimmered silver, like tiny rivers. Lyra grabbed Kael's arm. "Don't touch them." "Why? They aren't here anymore?" "What do you mean?" "Their bodies are. The rest of them," she looked toward the endless procession, "is already climbing." Kael didn't understand, but then he heard it, a sound so faint he first mistook it for wind. Flowing water, except there was no water nearby. The sound came from above, from inside the clouds, thousands, millions, billions of streams singing together, not with voices, with memories. He saw flashes that weren't his own, a little girl laughing beside a waterfall, an old fisherman kissing his wife, a soldier drinking from a mountain spring, rain falling onto deserts, snow melting, tears, birth, goodbyes. Every memory involving water echoed together inside the distant current. Kael collapsed to one knee. His head throbbed. The sound wasn't noise. It was remembrance. The rivers carried more than water. They carried every moment water had ever witnessed. "The sky rivers remember everything," Orin whispered. "And once you hear them, you can never completely stop listening." That night, Kael dreamed of his father, not as he remembered him, older, standing upon a bridge made entirely of flowing light. Behind him stretched endless rivers crossing the stars. His father smiled, not sadly, peacefully. "You came." Kael tried reaching him. The bridge grew longer. "No!" His father raised one hand. "Don't follow me. The water isn't calling you. It's testing you." "What does that mean?" "The heart is waking." "Where are you?" His father looked upward instead of answering. Something enormous moved beyond the clouds, a shadow larger than continents. The rivers trembled. His father's expression changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. "You must reach the heart before—" The dream shattered. Kael woke gasping. The ground was shaking. Mountains groaned. Birds exploded into the sky. And in the distance, beyond the northern peaks, a colossal pillar of water burst through the clouds, not upward, downward. For the first time since the catastrophe began, one river had reversed direction. Only one. It crashed from the heavens like liquid sunlight, striking the summit of the tallest mountain on earth. The impact echoed across the world. Orin stared in horror. His face had gone completely pale. "No." Lyra turned toward him. "What is it?" The old man whispered words neither of them wanted to hear. The first gate has opened. The mountain did not explode. It awakened. The pillar of water struck its summit with a sound so deep it seemed to come from beneath existence itself. Clouds spiraled around the peak like enormous living whirlpools. Lightning flashed inside the torrent, not white, but silver, as if the sky itself had cracked open. The earth trembled. Forests bent. Entire cliffs collapsed. Yet the pillar remained perfectly still. It did not splash. It did not spread. It simply connected the heavens and the world like a bridge made of liquid light. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Orin whispered the words every keeper had feared. The path has opened. As they climbed higher into the northern mountains, reality slowly unraveled. Snow floated upward before touching the ground. Shadows moved several seconds before the people casting them. Echoes arrived before voices. Sometimes Kael watched birds flying beneath the earth while fish swam through the sky above. Nothing remained certain. The world had become a place where direction no longer mattered. Only intention did. Every step demanded absolute focus. Whenever Kael doubted himself, the path twisted. Whenever he trusted his instincts, hidden bridges appeared beneath his feet. Lyra eventually understood why. The mountain isn't testing our strength. She looked around at cliffs constantly changing shape. It's testing what we choose to believe. Near the summit, they found thousands of the called. They stood silently in perfect circles surrounding the pillar of water. Each still held an empty bowl. Their silver eyes never blinked. No one moved. No one breathed. They looked like statues waiting for a command. At the center of every circle floated tiny droplets of water suspended in the air. Each droplet contained moving images. A mother comforting her child. Friends laughing beneath summer rain. An old couple crossing a bridge. Children splashing in rivers. Lives, entire lives. Kael stepped closer. The droplets were memories. Every bowl had once carried water. Every drop had witnessed joy, sorrow, courage, fear, sacrifice, and love. Nothing water ever touched had been forgotten. The sky rivers truly remembered everything. The three travelers reached the base of the pillar. Looking upward was impossible. The river disappeared beyond sight. It seemed to pierce infinity itself. Orin removed one of the empty glass bottles from around his neck. For the first time, Kael saw tears in the old man's eyes. "This is where I leave you." "What?" "The path ahead belongs only to those the heart has chosen." Lyra grabbed his arm. "You came all this way." "I came farther than I should have." He smiled sadly. "Many years ago, I climbed this bridge." Kael froze. "You reached the sky rivers?" Orin nodded. "I was young. I thought knowledge could save the world." "What happened?" "The heart asked me one question." "What question?" The old man looked toward the endless river. "It asked me what I loved more. The truth, or everyone waiting for me below." Silence settled between them. "I chose the truth." His voice cracked. "When I returned, my wife had died. My children had grown old. My village had become ruins." Kael stared in disbelief. "How long were you gone?" "I don't know. It felt like 1 hour. It was 83 years. The mountain had not merely bent gravity, it had bent time." Orin handed Kael the empty bottle. "I've carried this ever since. It once held water from the heart. It has been waiting for someone better than me." Before either teenager could answer, Orin stepped backward. The mountain mist swallowed him. Neither Kael nor Lyra ever saw him again. Together, they entered the pillar. instead of getting wet, they became weightless. The current carried them upward through impossible landscapes. Entire oceans flowed overhead. Whales swam among constellations. Schools of glowing fish darted between galaxies. Clouds became waterfalls. Rain climbed into seas floating upside down. Kael could no longer tell where the world ended and the heavens began. Then he saw them, the sky rivers. Not dozens, not hundreds, millions. Infinite currents of crystal water crossing eternity like luminous highways. Every river sang, not with words, with memories. The birth of civilizations, the first snowfall, the final tear of forgotten kings. Every goodbye ever whispered beside a river. Every child who had laughed in the rain. Every sailor who had trusted the sea. Every seed that had ever broken through the soil after drinking water. Nothing had been lost. Everything lived within the current. Lyra stood speechless. "I thought they carried water," Kael whispered. "They carry us." The current delivered them to an island suspended in the endless sky. There was no sun, no moon, only flowing rivers surrounding a single tree unlike anything either of them had imagined. Its trunk shimmered like polished glass. Its branches stretched farther than mountains. Instead of leaves, tiny drops of water hung from every branch. Billions of them. Inside each drop lived a single memory. The laughter of strangers, ancient battles, forgotten songs, first steps, last breaths. Every life touched by water had become part of this impossible tree. At its roots rested a heart, not made of flesh, made of flowing water. It beat slowly. Every pulse sent ripples across every sky river, the heart of the sky. It was awake. As Kael approached, the heart began speaking, not aloud. Inside every memory he had ever known, inside every drop of blood, inside every tear he had ever cried. "You have come." Its voice sounded ancient beyond imagination, not male, not female, simply eternal. Kael swallowed. "Why are you taking the world's water?" The heart remained silent for a long moment. Then images flooded his mind. He saw forests burned into ash, rivers poisoned, oceans filled with darkness, creatures suffocating beneath floating waste, children dying beside dry wells while kingdoms fought over water they did not own. He saw generations treating water as if it belonged to them. Instead of understanding, they belonged to it. Finally, the heart answered, "I am not taking it. I am calling it home." Kael's chest tightened. "You'll destroy the world." "No, you already have." Lyra stepped forward. "There has to be another way." The heart pulsed. There was. You were given thousands. Neither of them could deny what they had seen. The heart had witnessed every choice humanity had ever made, every act of kindness, every act of greed, every promise broken beside rivers that never complained. Until now. Kael looked around the island. Every drop hanging from the tree represented a life. The heart wasn't fueled by power. It was sustained by memory. Then he noticed something impossible. One branch was dying. Unlike every other shining drop, its memories were fading. Inside them, people shared water freely. Villages rebuilt together. Enemies became friends beside rivers. Children protected lakes instead of exploiting them. Hope. Those memories were disappearing. "Why are these fading?" The heart answered quietly. "Because they are no longer believed." Kael finally understood. The heart was not judging humanity. It was reflecting it. The sky rivers had always mirrored the balance between gratitude and selfishness. For countless ages, hope had outweighed greed. Not anymore. The rivers weren't abandoning humanity. Humanity had slowly abandoned the rivers. Suddenly, The island shook. The enormous shadow Kael had seen in his dream emerged beyond the flowing currents. It was larger than mountains, larger than continents. Its body was formed from endless storms wrapped around darkness. Eyes of empty sky opened across its colossal face. The rivers recoiled. Even the heart's rhythm faltered. Lyra whispered in horror, "What is that?" The heart answered, "The forgetting." It had no mouth, no claws, no weapons. Wherever it drifted, memories vanished. Rivers turned gray, drops became empty, songs fell silent. Kael watched entire streams lose their light as the creature approached. The forgetting is born whenever memory is abandoned. It cannot create. It can only erase. And every time people stop valuing what gives them life, it grows. The monster reached toward the heart. The sky rivers fractured. Across Earth, the last remaining lakes began rising all at once. The final ocean started leaving the planet. Time was ending. Kael looked at the dying branch, then at Orin's empty bottle, then at his father's journal. The final unfinished sentence suddenly appeared across its last page, not written in ink, written in living water. The heart cannot save the world, only remind it. Kael understood. The heart did not need another guardian. It needed someone willing to give humanity back its memories. He uncorked Orin's bottle. The heart looked at him. "What are you choosing?" Kael smiled through tears. "My father told me the world hides secrets because it wants to be discovered." He looked toward Lyra. "But some things aren't meant to stay hidden." He plunged the empty bottle into the heart. For one breathtaking instant, every memory contained within the sky rivers rushed into the tiny glass vessel. The bottle glowed brighter than the sun, too bright for human hands. Cracks spread across the glass. Lyra screamed, "Kael!" He already knew. The bottle would never survive, neither would he. He threw it toward the center of the tree. The glass shattered, not into pieces, into rain. Billions upon billions of shimmering drops exploded across the heavens. Every memory carried by every sky river fell back toward Earth. Rain began to descend. For the first time since the catastrophe started, water fell. Children looked up as gentle drops kissed their faces. Deserts drank. Forests breathed again. Empty wells filled. Rivers rushed back toward the sea. But people saw more than rain. Every person witnessed memories that were not their own. Farmers saw whales crossing ancient oceans. Kings felt the thirst of forgotten villages. Children experienced the first rainfall ever seen by humanity. Strangers remembered one another's joys and griefs. For one extraordinary moment, the entire world understood that every drop connected every living thing. No one stood alone. No river belonged to one nation. No ocean belonged to one kingdom. The water had always belonged to life itself. The forgetting let out a silent cry. Without forgotten memories to feed upon, its enormous body dissolved into harmless mist. The sky rivers shone brighter than ever before. The heart slowed, peacefully, like someone finally able to rest. Kael expected darkness. Instead, he opened his eyes beside the river in Windmere. Morning sunlight danced across flowing water. Children laughed. The mill wheel turned once more. Lyra sat nearby, equally confused. Neither understood how they had returned. Only one thing had changed. The old observatory was gone. No doorway, no mountain chamber, as though it had never existed. Kael reached into his pack. His father's journal remained. Every page was blank, except the final one. A single sentence remained. As long as people remember where the water comes from, the rivers will always find their way home. If this story captured your imagination, there's much more to come. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale. Until next time, take care and keep wondering.